Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of B is for Build. So in the beginning of this episode, I actually wasn't here. I wasn't even in the state. I had to go to California to hold a couple meetings for some stuff in the future. That's really, really cool. And as soon as I can, I'll tell you guys about that. But really exciting stuff coming in the future. So with the Jumpicon, it is powered by an LS engine. And it's not this LS engine that you see in front of you from our old off-road Corvette. But we needed an LS that we could use for mock-up and even for running. So while our LS engine is being built, I set the guys off to go get another LS, and the easiest way to do it was to grab the off-road Corvette. So this car is officially being retired because the Jumpicon is essentially just a complete replacement for it. So we're taking the engine out of it and we're going to use it for mock-up, and then we'll probably end up using it in the single-seater build later on this year. So the guys pulled the off-road Corvette into the shop and started doing the teardown. So you can see it's easiest to start with getting the radiator and those fluids out, gives you the room in the front. Oscar then took off the intake manifold and then was able to start running the wiring harness away from the engine. And after that, it's time to kind of jump underneath and start unbolting some of the different things from the steering rack, which needs to be lowered down to get this engine out. Taking the wheels off, the exhaust is coming off here. You can see there's a really big like under tray that all comes off that holds the torque tube. So that it goes engine, then torque tube, and then a transaxle in this vehicle. So you want to get the engine away from that torque tube. And Oscar's unbolting all the different things that are going on down there. There's also some... Let's see, so he's got the control arms off from the top here on both sides, upper control arms, and that allows that whole front subframe to drop down a little bit, and that's what you saw. And then after that, it's just time to find the bolt-up spots to get a good pick on the engine. And you can see the engine's coming up, but it looks like that front subframe needs to come down a little bit more. So after a little bit of shimmying and wiggling around, we're harvesting ourselves an LS engine to be able to mount into our Huracan. So that's what's in today's episode. We are going to be mounting an LS engine into the Jumpicon. Again, this is a mock-up engine. It's not the real engine that we're going to be using, but it is going to get in the exact right spot so we can build all of our mounts, and then from there we can start getting our axle measurements.
Before we get down to work, I want to take a second out to thank our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by SimpliSafe. You guys know SimpliSafe. We've had our shop and my home protected by SimpliSafe for years. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's almost always a rise in break-ins during the holiday season. So because of that, SimpliSafe is having their best deal of the year. So listen up. The name SimpliSafe is really fitting because it is very simple. You can simply order online or you can order over the phone and you get it delivered right to your home, and you can set it up yourself in under an hour. And from there, your home is professionally monitored 24/7, and if anything happens, they will make sure the police get called. And they've got sensors to cover every door, every window, every motion in room, and all sorts of other extras too, like water sensors and freeze sensors, glass break sensors, cameras, HD cameras, all sorts of great stuff. And it's all really, really easy to use, and you get around-the-clock protection for just 50 cents a day with no contracts. I personally got interested in home security a few years back when I got the wheels stolen off of two of my cars sitting right in front of my house. And not long after that, I actually partnered up with SimpliSafe, and I got a system installed in my house, and now I have a camera pointing directly in front of my house and my vehicles, monitoring everything 24/7. And here at the shop, we run it too. So you can see that we have our keypad right here. You can see that we got our automatic door lock guy right there. Our base station is glowing right there, telling us we're all locked down. So I hit home, so it's basically thinking, okay, we're protected inside our home, ready for bed. We got our motion sensors. This is one of many sensors we have around. And then we have things like our HD camera here as well. And you can see this is one of our door sensors as well. And what I love is when it opens, it makes a little noise. And then you know that somebody's coming into your house. And you know, it lets you know that your sensors are working and that your alarm's off if somebody just came into your house. And if your alarm is on, it'll make a much louder noise. And like I said before, if anything does actually happen, the monitoring service is going to call the police when it's alerted to anything going on inside your house. So guys, it's time to up your home security system game. Make sure you don't get your wheels stolen like I did. Go to simplisafe.com/B is for build or click the link right there at the top of the description and go check out their holiday offers. Huge thanks to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this episode. Let's get down to work. Hey everybody, I'm back. And my off-road Corvette is engineless. So we do have an LS engine that's actually being purposely built for the Jumpicon, and we're going to jump into that and tell you all about it and show you it in January when we get a little bit closer to that. But what we needed for now is a test platform that we can use to mount into the Jumpicon the right way, because this is going to be mounted differently than the one we did in the Burntcon, and we needed to get all of our accessory systems and everything else like that start set up so we can keep moving forward. Oh, and also then once we get our transaxle mounted to this, we can tell where our axles go and start ordering our axles. So we really need to move forward with getting an engine into the Jumpicon as soon as possible, and I thought this is a great candidate because we know it's a good, strong running engine, and it wasn't being used. So Oscar and Kyle did a great job of getting it pulled out of there. Let's go ahead and get the Corvette out of here, get some things back in place, and we'll start going over this engine and figuring out what we can use on it. This accessory system is a little bit deeper than what we're used to, so there's going to be a little bit of figuring out to do there, but let's clear out the shop, make a little bit of room, and start making this look like the Jumpicon workspace once again. Huracan chassis is in place, and we're gonna have to take a couple of these little clamps off, but we do need to get creative, find a way to keep these on here so we can figure out where our knuckle is gonna go, because that'll tell us how far back the engine can go for our axles to meet up with it. Engine's about ready to be mock fit in here, except for we gotta just pop this bell housing off. This is the bell housing meant to go to the torque tube, and we have an adapter plate that goes to the Graziano transmission that's just been sitting in the back of the shop over there, and that is a transmission off of a Lamborghini. Oh, it's a transaxle off of a Lamborghini Gallardo manual. So it's got good gearing for this application, all other sorts of good stuff. So go ahead and pop that off, and we'll start mock fitting this thing in here and see how it looks. It always looks so exciting getting a friggin' V8 just like test fit up in these cars. This is it's so cool, and it's such an exciting moment, and really not that hard to do. So anyways, what Oscar and I are talking about, obviously the engine's very high right now. We need to bring it down. Our front accessory system here is much larger than our last one, and that's kind of what we've been planning on. For redundancy and reliability, we'd love to run basically just a stock Corvette front accessory system. It's been proven to work and very reliable. So we got to get the engine down, and what that means next is that we have probably going to run into problems with our fuel cells. So if we use the stock Lamborghini fuel cells, that's what we're discussing right now. Where is the engine going to hit them? Is it going to hit them too hard? And should we even use them at all, or should we build our own fueling system and stuff like that? So let's go ahead and jump over to the Burntcon, and we're going to grab some measurements as far as how far the fuel cells come out. They stick in down there, and then they kind of come out around here, and they connect up down there. You guys miss this car as much as I do? I definitely miss it. All right, so we've got a tank right there, and it definitely tucks away, so it's getting pretty close to, okay, so it connects up with this lower, barely can see where my finger is, this lower section right here. What we can't really see because of our heat shielding and stuff over here is how close it gets to the engine. I'll walk over to Oscar's side. Well, it's extremely hard to show you guys, but with our really slim accessory system, you can see that heat shielding down there. That heat shielding right there, you can see is a little bit away from the alternator that's right there, just a couple inches of space. We're just gonna have to run our hands up and down it and see the difference between this back firewall and that fuel cell. Now that we've built so much stuff off the back of this thing, it's a whole different ball game. I love my Garrett turbos. Okay, we got our measurements and took more looks around, and it does look like it's probably going to be best for us to build our own fuel system. It'll be interesting to figure out where we go to get a bladder system built, or if there's something online we can buy. I'm pretty sure there'll be something online we could buy. And it's looking like we'll have one over there and one over there, and I'm even thinking about having dual filling, so have a filler neck over there and a filler neck over here, so we wouldn't have to worry about fuel transfer, stuff like that, and we could fill up the vehicle twice as fast when we're in the pits, which is actually a big deal because we got to do 20 gallons of fuel each lap that we do during the race. So having two fuel fill-up points actually is kind of a bonus, so that's kind of cool. Next thing we're looking at is how far the engine, so that's like, we figured out some up, down, front to back stuff, but obviously the engine's like right here now, and we're probably going to need it to go further forward, which would mean modifying our firewall, which is no big deal, but we want to figure out by how much. So we're going to go do some measurements off of our other Graziano with the adapter plate, figure out where our axle is going to be exactly. We're going to go ahead and bolt back up or like clamp back up all our suspension stuff, get our hub actually out here, and then we'll just like run like a broom handle back and forth and see what the axle would be looking like and where it is, and that'll tell us if we need to, how far we need to shove this engine forward into the cockpit. All right, guys, after looking everything over, doing a ton of measurements and looking through some online kind of catalogs and stuff, figuring out what parts we have available and what parts we already have ordered, we've come to the conclusion of what we want to run. So the LS runs the thinnest accessory system, meaning it keeps your engine, you know, as short as you can this way, except the water pump. On the earlier Corvette, I meant to say the Corvette accessory system, not just LS systems, but the Corvette system stays as thin as you can, slim as you can, except for this pulley right here. If you get a newer Corvette's water pump, the pulley is about that thick rather than having all the rest here, which you can see is hitting our firewall. So we're going to swap out water pumps. We're going to get a different one of those, and we need to go ahead and, but other than that, we're going to run this exact accessory system. So the same harmonic balancer on the bottom we're going to run. We'll buy all brand new stuff for our new engine, but this is the blueprint. So we're going to go ahead and pull this engine out right now, install our power steering and our alternator, and we're going to remove our AC compressor because we're not going to have AC in this car, and then we'll go ahead and start test fitting her back up and see where we're going to cut. We're going to actually, on this build, cut the firewall and bring it in a little bit so we have more room. On our burnt con, since it was a drag car, we decided to run everything electric water pumps, electric everything. We're looking for more reliability and redundancy on this one, so none of that stuff. Keep it all super simple in case anything breaks on race day or leading up to it. We'll be able to replace it really quickly, and worrying about less electrical stuff and going more mechanical is going to give us more reliability on this build. So let's go ahead and get the engine out, change over some of those accessories, install some new ones, and then we'll draw a big hole where we're going to chop up my Lamborghini some more. All right, we got everything on here and something's off. So the compressor's gone. We decided to change up kind of how this was gonna go. Normally the alternator wants to live way up here. It's a little bit high for my liking, and if we're gonna be modifying the firewall, which we're still not sure if we're gonna do yet, if we're gonna need to do, I didn't wanna be cutting as big of a hole out. So I bought a relocation bracket that basically puts the alternator right here. So the alternator is gonna go right here. Power steering pump's gonna go right here. We're gonna modify this. We have a new power steering pump that's coming that's specifically for our upgraded power steering system in this vehicle. It's meant for off-road racing. We'll modify this, trim it, and cut it through, and that'll take this whole bracket off of here. So this is basically the package now that's emulating what we're really gonna have, except for this thing won't be so ridiculously long. So it's time to go ahead and smush this thing back into the firewall and see if we're gonna cut, and if so, how much. Good news, we don't have to cut a bunch of holes in the firewall and what's left of the chassis here. When we get our slimmer water pump, we're gonna move this thing forward about 1.5 inches to 1.75 inches. That's gonna give us an inch between the firewall and the belt systems. And then we've been mocking up an axle here, so we pretend that this is our axle. And because the reason the engine doesn't have to go so far forward like we did in the last build is because we have our own custom suspension, which actually moved the hub back a little bit more as well. So the axles are actually going to come out right about through here. So we'll clearance a little bit of this guy out right here, clearance that out, and we'll have full swing on the axle from the transmission. Tape measure down. So it's time to start building our mounts and our reinforcements. So we're gonna go ahead and pull the engine out one more time, take the water pump off. We took all the measurements to get the right height so we know how far we need to go down. We're gonna go ahead and cut this center support out just like we did on the last Huracan, because we're gonna be rebuilding one over there that runs under the oil pan. So engine out, water pump off, and then cut frame. Now that we got the water pump off, the engine can go as far forward as we need it to. Cut that little bit out and the oil pan sits right through there. This is a Corvette style oil pan, which is a really slim oil pan. Gives you a lot of ground clearance, but it's extra wide. But I do like it because it's rear sump and I think it's gonna be the best for our application. So that's good. You can see the engine's not level and we're not sure if the vehicle's level. So we're gonna level both of those out and then it'll tell us where we're gonna put our support. Everything's in place, vehicle's level, engine's level, everything's aligned and spaced out correctly. So what we're gonna be doing now is the same thing that we did on the Huracan. We're gonna be building a support, a 4" by 1" support that runs from here to the other side. And we'll have 1 foot that comes off of this and runs to the engine mount, and then 1 foot that comes out of this pad right here and runs to the engine mount. So I ran to Metal Supermarkets earlier today and got some 2 by 1, and then we're gonna go ahead and stitch weld this together. Because it'll have the inner walling, it'll actually be a little bit stronger than running just a 4 by 1. The seam will actually have dual walls and that'll help keep it a little bit more sturdy for that support going across a long distance. So we're gonna go ahead and pull the engine out now and start sizing this up and getting ready to be able to make that cut, see where we wanna fit it in there, and then I'm gonna be designing a pad that's gonna go there and another one that'll go over there. Oscar used the spool gun and got our cross support stitch welded together. So I was going to show you kind of, this is why we did it with 2 separate pieces, so we'd have that piece running through the middle for more structural support. So now he's going to go ahead and go over the car and notch this out a little bit so it fits in there snug, and we'll get that welded in the car. While we're doing that, Kyle designed some foot pads that fit inside the Lamborghini engine mount spot, and we're going to use our awesome Miller Dream Cutter 6000. That's our internal code name. It's the Spectrum 625 Extreme that they sent us, and this thing has been saving us so much time with cutting a lot of this stuff. So we're gonna cut these 2 pads out here. Then once we have this piece inside the car, we'll design 2 more pads that land on this. Cross support is welded in. That's pretty awesome. We will you know, kind of cap these off for a little bit more structural integrity. So Kyle is working on the caps right now. Plasma cut them out, so he's just gonna finish up sanding those around. We, for both of our kits, for the Huracan and for the Jumpacon, we start with a generic off of eBay LS engine mount. These are made out of plenty strong steel, and we've never had any problems with them. And this is actually the same kit that we used on the other one. So we're gonna go ahead, and this rubber right here is the isolator that you know, tries to eliminate the vibrations coming down into the chassis. And then so we're gonna just bolt this plate up on each side right here, and then what we do is we do tubes coming off of our 2 foot pads right there and right there that come and triangulate into these, which you guys will see in a second. So for right now, we're gonna unbolt these little army guys and then bolt this up onto our engine. We're ready to get this engine mounted in. So we got the engine mounts bolted up to the engine, and then this is kind of what we get coming off of it. So each one of these has a little pad that it lands on. So for each side, you can see that we've got a plate there. So that's the stock kind of OEM Lamborghini mounting point, and then this is our new one of our support that we built in here. So we're gonna slide the engine into here, straighten it up, get it the exact height we want, make sure it's well, straight with the car, level with the world, and all of those, you know, angles that we need to make sure that we hit perfectly. And then we hold the engine right there, and we're going to build some tubing that comes off of each one of these plates and connects up with that engine mount tab right there that you see for each side. So we'll get it in, we'll get it set, and we'll start cutting some tube. Nailed it! We got the engine in here. This is exactly where the engine needs to be. So what we did was we split the difference on the shimmy between the two sides, got it straight. We have our little 1-inch bar. That's our 1-inch space between our serpentine belt system to the back of the car. And then you can see that we got about $6 worth of levels sitting here telling us that the engine is good this way and it's good this way. So if you're at home wondering how to mount an engine in a Lamborghini, $6 worth of levels and a little bit of measuring, you're good to go. Aha! Engine mounts. So Oscar went ahead and cut the different tubes at the angles that they needed to land in the different feet, and then so they both go up and attach to these things that I was talking about earlier, and then we have a centerpiece that connects them both up. So we're going to fully weld these out and then throw some bolts through there, and the engine should be able to stand right on its own. Engine mounts are welded up. I'm going to try and kick this over without burning myself. And we cap these so no water would drain down these. And they are ready to, well, they're going to cool off for just a second. A little warm in there. And then we're going to bring them into the car and connect them up with the engine and mount the engine into the car. Yay! The B is for Bill boys have done it again. Oscar wanted to throw some little fancy bits on there, so we just put the stock intake manifold and threw some exhaust on here. I think we're going to actually try and work with this exhaust, but here's the handiwork. The engine mounts leading up to the engine. We nailed it as far as exactly where we wanted to be. We're exactly centered. Oh, and this is really cool too. So like I said, that the Corvette oil pan is the thinnest, slimmest oil pan basically on the market. And if you look at the bottom of this car, that thing you're seeing right there is the bottom of the Huracan frame, and it is like dead parallel with our oil pan. So that's going to be really perfect, so we can build a protective guard right underneath. We'll build some little standoffs and then put a protective guard under the bottom of this. We don't have to worry about our oil pan bottoming out on anything. So that is fantastic. And this just looks so cool once again. So the last time we totally mounted the LS differently, and this one is further back. You can see our accessory drive system. We have a 1-inch space off of the firewall. And the last one we actually went in and under, but this one, because we have our own suspension, we're actually able to mount it back a little bit more. We did the same height as the other one though, because it made the axles be in a good spot. It's just so fun to look at. That's so cool. We're getting really, really excited. We've got this in here, and we honestly just stood around it and stared at it for 20 minutes talking about how awesome it is. So that is a wrap on this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you want to check out our merch, go to bsforbuild.com. Appreciate you guys all for joining us on this build. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace!